Welcome. I'm Jenny Laughlin, President of Richardson Area Democrats. Thank you for taking the time to show up tonight. Saturday morning, we all woke up to news that the United States military had invaded Venezuela, bombing various points in and around the capital of Caracas, as well as ports and military complexes, which all sounded a lot like we had gone to war. Shortly thereafter, reports of having captured the president and his wife were hit the air. This was all underlaid with the reality that Congress had not given authorization to attack Venezuela. My head was spinning, and I figured I wasn't the only one who would benefit from some grounding. I wanted to hear from someone who knew more than me about military operations, so I reached out to a few candidates who have served. I wouldn't say it made me feel better, but there is value in knowing truth and facts. And so we bring this conversation to you tonight. If you have not already, please smash the subscribe button so that you can participate in the conversation. For security reasons, only subscribers who have been subscribed for at least 5 minutes can ask questions and make comments, and we will be monitoring the comments. I'd like to introduce the moderator, herself a former candidate and veteran, who currently serves in the Air Force Reserves as JAG. That stands for Judge Advocate General's Office, or in case you didn't know, like I didn't. Kate Rumsey, along with her co-host Alex Clark, have a podcast called Mission Texas about flipping Texas blue. We're thankful that they could help us out tonight. And without further ado, I'll ask Kate to take it from here.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Richardson Area Democrats. We are so excited to be here. Again, my name is Kate. I have a co-host, Alex Clark, who's also on. As Jenny said, we are hosting a podcast called Mission Texas. It started this fall, where we're interviewing people all over the state to talk about how we're going to actually flip this place, because we need to by the next census, or else we're going to lose the White House. We are gaining more congressional seats here in Texas because we got more people coming. And that means we have more electoral votes and power. So we're trying to figure out how to do it, what the plan is, and also provide you information on how we are going to flip it and what you can do to be a part of it. But we both are people from the military. As Jenny said, I'm still in the Air Force Reserves as a lawyer. And my co-host, Alex, is an Air Force veteran. So we are mission oriented, hence the name Mission Texas. I should say at the outset, as a lawyer, I have to have a disclaimer. None of us here on this Zoom call and on YouTube represent the viewpoints of our employers, and we do not represent the viewpoints of the Department of Defense, or in my case, the Air Force. I'm not in orders. This is all of our personal time. But one of our goals has been always to interview a bunch of service members, people who are veterans and also served in a civilian capacity. So we are so excited that we were able to do this with RAD. So without further ado, I want, before we dive into what happened yesterday and what led up to that, to go around the horn and ask each of our candidates, because we got a lot of them here tonight, to tell us where they are running, who they are, and also what is their service background. We got people who are also served in a civilian and military capacity. So I'm going to go in order of alphabetical order by the last name. And my first person is Kevin Burge, who's running in my neck of the woods. So Kevin, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you, Jenny from RAD, for hosting this. Again, my name is Kevin Burge. I'm running for Congress in the 24th District. That's Tarrant County and Dallas County, northern parts of it. I was in the Marine Corps for about 8.5 years. I have 2 tours in Iraq, in Al-Taqaddum and Fallujah. After the Marine Corps, I joined the Defense Intelligence Agency and had another tour to Kabul, Afghanistan. So, and I've worked for around nearly every 3-letter intelligence agency in Washington, D.C. as well. So, thank you very much.
Yeah. Running against Beth Van Dyne in my area, who has been doing nothing but reposting what Trump has said recently and about the Venezuelan conflict. So next person is Keenen Colbert.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Keenen Colbert. I'm running for Senator of District 2 here in Texas. My background in the military, I served in the Marine Corps like Kevin for a little over 8 years. My first 4 years, I served as an infantry mortarman, and my last 4 years, I served as a commissioned officer as a logistics officer. Um, I'm truly honored and humbled to be in the presence of such great, fine folks that are trying to make a positive difference in our state and in our country, and I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. And I should say, as you probably alluded to, that we're all Democrats and we've all got this service history. And so I think that's pretty incredible, especially given all of our collective service to our country and all of us taking oaths to the Constitution. The next person, Milah Flores.
Hey everybody, my name is Milah Flores. I am running for Congress in Texas District 17. So I think I'm the one out here who's not in North Texas. I in the Waco area, the Round Rock area. So I'm excited to be here. I was civilian personnel, GS civilian, and I worked for the Army, Air Force, and Space Force. Resigned last year and am doing this to make a difference. I feel like I can make a bigger change on this side of things. So
Amazing. Thank you, Milah. We love people from Waco too. So Zach Herbert.
Howdy, I'm Zach Herbert. I'm running for House District 112 in the Texas House of Representatives. I'm a Marine Corps veteran as well. I did almost 4 years in the Marines as a judge advocate, and my job was to defend Marines and sailors that were accused of crimes in courts martial.
Another lawyer. Yes, I love it. Thank you, Zach. Evan Hunt.
Thank you for having me on. Honored to be here. I am running for federal Congress, 3rd District, against Republican incumbent Keith Self. That's all the way from McKinney all the way out to Mount Pleasant now. So it stretches across 7 counties. I'm a 20-year Air Force combat veteran. I flew in the back of B-1 bombers as a weapons systems officer, multiple combat missions in Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation New Dawn, Iraq and Afghanistan. I did mission planning, and I ended up retiring as lieutenant colonel as a commander of a C-130 maintenance unit. Thank you.
Wow. I'm wondering who's the highest ranking on this call. You might be beating us all, Evan, but thank you. I'm glad we have another Air Force person, sir, I should say. Next, Ernest Lineberger.
Hi, I'm Ernest Lineberger, and thank you so much for having me. So, I was actually a preacher's kid, a chaplain's son, U.S. Navy, and we spent time on Marine Corps bases and Navy bases while I was growing up. I joined through ROTC to get through college, and then currently retired as a naval officer, specialized in nuclear power, served tours on multiple warships and shore commands. I was also on the USS Nimitz. That might be my closest tour of duty to this attack that we're going to talk about. But I also did a lot of Caribbean anti-drug ops on a destroyer, multiple months coming down into the Caribbean and stopping ships. But that's me. I'm running for Congress in North Texas. It's CD 26. That's Denton, Cook, and Wise counties north of DFW.
Thank you, Ernest. And I see your sign in the back. I love that. Always be hustling, I guess. William Marks.
Hey friends, my name is William Marks. I'm running for Congress in Texas, Congressional District 25. That's Arlington, Fort Worth, and 12 additional counties to the west. I'm a 22-year Navy combat veteran. My final assignment was senior military spokesperson for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I've been seeing this circus at a classified and unclassified level since about 2015.
This circus. Okay. Thank you, William. And then our last person, last but not least, Nathan Smith.
Hello, I'm Nathan Smith. I am running for Tarrant County District Clerk, which is on all Tarrant County ballots. It's a Tarrant County government position. Nobody knows what it is, so don't worry if you don't. I am a former Army officer. I did 7 years on active duty, 1 combat deployment to Afghanistan, and 1 operational deployment to Kuwait. I got a Bronze Star from the first deployment. I'm from a 3-generation military officer family. My grandfather was a World War II fighter pilot. My grandmother was a Navy nurse, and both of my parents were naval officers. And that's pretty much me.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, well, I think that's everybody. Well, I wanted to just dive into what happened yesterday, but we didn't just plop a bunch of people in the middle of Venezuela. I believe there is an escalation. Somehow we got people down to the Caribbean. And I'm wondering, Ernest, how, especially given your experience that you just told us about, like, how do you perceive how we got to yesterday, that escalation?
Yes, yes. And I'd like to go a little further back. So World War II ended about 1945. Then we had the Korean War, 50 to 53, the Vietnam War, 55 to 75, and we stopped drafting at about that point, drafting people. So in about the 1970s, our Congress had about 57% veterans in the US House and about 70% veterans in the Senate. Today, both the House and the Senate are about 18%. So I'm really excited to see this group of candidates, and I hope a lot of us have our seatbelts buckled and we're ready to flip these seats because we need this veterans perspective on a lot that's going on. So there's been a lot, from the Falklands War with Argentina and the British, there's been a lot going on in the Southern Hemisphere. There's been a lot of drugs coming from the south to north. I spent a lot of time on a destroyer stopping uh, just all kinds of vessels, fishing vessels, cargo vessels, executives with their families on a sailboat and searching them and sending them on their way. We did not shoot one back in the day. I don't know why the executive branch decided that drugs coming from boats from Venezuela were fair targets for shooting. I don't know why. And I'm really, uh, I don't know if the right word is, but I'm frustrated, I guess, that the Congress didn't do more to put a stop to it, that we didn't get more JAG involved. But clearly, when Doge first started taking hold at the beginning of 2025 after the inauguration, they got rid of all the inspector generals. They got rid of many people that look at what's going on and can put a stop to things. Uh, we've seen the Department of Defense has eliminated a lot of the news people that they talk to, the news pool, and they only let people in there that are friendly to them now. And they've talked a lot about loyalty and they've been trying to, they have been getting rid of a lot of flag officers and other people who might resist. Early in the attacks on these boats, we had a flag officer resign and say, "I'm not going to be part of this." I think today we have attacked 35 boats and killed 115 people in those boats. Interestingly enough, some of those were in the Pacific. Venezuela has no Pacific coast, so that was not specifically anti-Venezuela, but supposedly anti-drug ops. When they sent a carrier battle group to the Caribbean, that's not entirely unusual because we do a lot of training in the Caribbean. We have places down there, particularly off Cuba, that have a lot of operation areas. But for it to go down there and stay, and the other ships accompanying with so many additional forces, it was just pretty obvious something was going to happen, very much like when the Russian President Putin amassed a large number of tanks and forces just outside of Ukraine in 1922. But anyway, so the escalation, I think it kind of surprised all of us that this was actually going to be a capture of President Maduro. It seemed like there was more talk going on where President Maduro was trying to get some conversations going. I don't know if he saw what was happening more than we did, but I do want to say our armed forces seem to execute professionally and extremely brilliantly. I am hurt that we killed more people in the apprehension of a fugitive in this legal matter. I don't know why we justify that. And I feel when this first happened, and I actually got to talk to Jenny pretty soon after, I had two thoughts. One, this is additional distraction from the Epstein files that keep dribbling out. because the people that are worried about that are very big on distraction and oil. Oil is just huge.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
we'll
don't
get
have much
into the
more on the escalation.
justification. Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to talk more about imminent threats and the justification behind that. But I want to mention that, to your point, the second set of personnel that this administration fired was the lawyers. So they fired the Joint Chief and then the lawyers, the head JAGs. So that just gives you a sense of what this administration is all about. But as I understand it, just to give a sense of who's involved, and I wanted to mention that we're representing nearly every service branch except for the Coast Guard, and almost nearly service branch was involved in this mission. And I want to say, just as we all representing the military, civilians, and also veterans, that we appreciate their service, and that this decision is not being led by them. Decisions that are made by and for the military by civilian leadership, like the president and the secretary of defense. And we are commanded, we're obliged, we have to obey those orders. And so I want to make sure that we give due regard to our service members that were involved, and not try to blame them. So, but who was involved? U.S. Army's Delta Force. Air support was, we believe, were F-22s, F-35s, B-1 bombers with the Air Force and Navy. We have naval assets, destroyers, cruisers, and also a lot of the intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA. And so that's a lot of people. That's a lot of folks that were involved. And Keenen, given your background in logistics, I'm wondering, how do you perceive all that? Like, how did we get all those people together?
Thank you for asking that question. I would say, to keep it short and sweet, I would say that it obviously comes with a lot of training and rehearsal. Like this, as an operation, logistically speaking, to what you were just saying, there were a lot of different moving parts involved. There were a lot of vehicles, to include law enforcement, to get their desired target even into New York City. Like, you're talking armored vehicles, like armored vehicles from law enforcement. You're talking helicopters. You're talking naval vessels. You're talking jets. This is not something that anyone a part of that operation just woke up and decided to do. No, they had to, like, this took a grave amount of planning and rehearsal. It's no operation of that scale, especially to be done at that, the green light for this operation was given, I think it was 10:46 p.m. the night prior. So this all happened within the short span of hours. They were ready. All those elements for that operation were ready well and far in advance, before anything was ever given the green light. These jets were fueled. These teams were ready to go. The individuals that were operating on the ground, they had probably rehearsed that dozens and dozens and dozens of times over. So for them, and again, I'm not putting the blame on any of the troops that were, simply executing orders. Like, that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. But for them, that is not something that they just woke up and decided that they were going to do. They had planned for this. There were phases of this exercise that, logisticians and pilots and ground operators have, dug through in every detail for, months and months in advance. It seems like it happened suddenly to the average person that doesn't have any bit of military experience, like all of us in this discussion have. But for those of us that have had that peek behind the curtain, that have been a part of operations or complex operations or operations overseas, you didn't just wake up and suddenly deploy, right? You trained for that deployment. You trained to even be qualified to perform in that deployment. You trained for that operation. You probably had tape exercises if you're on the ground. And this is just from me speaking out of my perspective as a prior infantryman myself. even at the very ground level of it, at the very minimum, you're putting tape down and you're measuring out the approximate space of the room you plan on breaching, right? Like, is there a door here, or is there a wall here, or is there a window here? Who's going to cover this? Who's going to be first in? It's all of these little details. Who's going to maintain security whenever you initially breach? It's this level of detail that I want to emphasize for everybody that's watching. It's not just something that suddenly happened that, you know, a group of highly trained professionals just woke up and decided to do. They rehearsed, they practiced, they
Well, can
thought
I
of
ask,
every.
on that point, and given like you're asking, like, is there a door? What kind of building are we in? And I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, Keenen, but
No, go
thank
ahead.
you. Because I wanted to loop in Kevin Burge from his intelligence background on that discussion, because what did we know, like, as we led into this, as we understand the intel part of this?
Yeah, so it's hard to say, what we know. But the trend here is that this was not something that happened overnight. Exercises like this take a lot of time. They typically also take a lot of authorization. And a question that I have is whether or not Congress was, at least the House Intelligence Committee, was actually informed. We heard, previously when Iran was struck, in coordination with Israel, that only the Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee were actually notified of that strike. And so, what role did Congress have in the authorization of an exercise like this from the intelligence portion of it is a question that I think we need to be asking our representatives. Now, on the operational side of this, again, it's hard to say, what was known, what wasn't known, but by and large, there's 17 intelligence agencies in the United States. Two of these, the Central Intelligence Agency and Defense Intelligence Agency, are all source intelligence. So they typically would take the lead in something like this, especially with heavy military presence, heavy, civilian and embed intelligence from the ground. And then in coordination with all the other intelligence agencies, and a horde, a huge cohort of absolute specialists in not just the region like South America, but specifically in Venezuela, or specifically with extreme in-depth knowledge of Maduro as well and his whereabouts. And so a lot of this work of going into an operation like this is already mostly set up through, very, very talented, very professional analysts who have done, hordes of research that go to inform military missions or intelligence missions, like what we saw here. So, but yeah, that's a really good question, Kate. Thank you.
Yeah, well, to the first point that you made on Congress's involvement, I mean, we heard a lot about the justification of this and why Congress wasn't involved, right? That this was law enforcement, that this was really about an indictment against Maduro. And I can speak to that as a former DOJ prosecutor, that there was an indictment back in 2020. It was recently amended, I believe, out of the Southern District of New York. And normally we have people, when we have a foreign national, we use the extradition process, which means we ask a country through a treaty to get their person and then they bring them over. You may remember, like in drug trafficking, like El Chapo or something like that. Here, there are sometimes countries that don't abide by those extradition treaties, or we don't have one with them. For example, I had a case with a Chinese national, and we had to wait until they were in Vegas on a floor of a casino at a conference before we could arrest that person. So here, though, we are entering a country, we've attacked part of their infrastructure. We've heard law enforcement, drug trafficking. We've also heard oil. We've heard that they had a stolen election. There's a lot of things going on, but it seems to me, like to your point, Kevin, that Congress should and potentially under law been involved. And so I want to loop in Nathan on his perspective out there in Tarrant County.
Yeah, I think for me, that's the main point and or the main question. And it gets to, in my view, a longer running problem that we've had in this country that frankly is a bit of a bipartisan problem. we're all Democrats on this call, and I think the Democratic Party has been much better on the war powers issues, especially in recent years. But there has been about a 50-year shift and weakening in Congress asserting its authority per the Constitution to declare war. Now, in the modern context, how we tend to declare war, how Congress declares war, is through what's called an authorization for the use of military force. So, for instance, prior to the Iraq invasion in 2003, as bad as that was as an idea and as catastrophic as it was for our country, President Bush back then did go to Congress and get them to pass an authorization for the use of military force to invade Iraq. That vote, if you look back into our political history, a lot of lawmakers came to regret that vote from both parties. And so I think that the lesson that has been learned over the last 20 years from certain people in Congress has been avoid a vote on an authorization for the use of military force whenever possible, because then you do not own the consequences when that mission goes bad down the road, as the Iraq War did, right? And on a political level, that's understandable. On a moral level, it is absolutely inexcusable, because what we are asking our congresspeople to do is stand and be counted before they put our service members in harm's way. And that is not something that anyone who's taking that office should have a problem doing, in my opinion. So this, to me, is a tragic, but also somewhat predictable result of a 50-year slide in Congress not doing what it's supposed to do to play a central role in war powers. Because now we're in a situation where, Congress wasn't even notified, it sounds like, before this went down. And the thought that only one party's leaders in Congress would be notified before the Iran strikes is also just insane. Like, that's not how that works or should ever work. So that's just kind of my viewpoint on that.
Yeah, that definitely was a light bulb moment for me when you talked about, like, I guess I didn't realize that people were avoiding votes like that. And especially here, where I believe that there is supposed to be notification given to Congress, and they're supposed to be looped into a lot. And they were telling us, I remember I was watching the Sunday morning talking heads, and Marco Rubio saying, well, we just didn't want to tell Congress because we didn't want it to be leaked out or something like that. But I'm wondering, based on other agencies' involvement, and Milah, I know your experience with Homeland Security, like, how do you perceive it with them? What is going on with Homeland Security with this operation?
So one thing I would say, and I think a lot of us who are talking right now can really say, is we've seen this start to happen before January 3rd. The massive amounts of boats that were there, or the warships that were there. If you look at history, this is definitely a sign that something is about to happen. So I've been saying for a couple months to my husband in particular, just this is going to turn into something bad. This really is going to turn into something bad. It was one thing after another. And then we had in December when they made fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. Right there, instantly in my head, I thought of Iraq, us going in there to get those weapons of mass destruction that were never there. And it's a fear tactic. Other countries use it. Other countries, as Russia, China, they use fear tactics to scare their people. When the people are scared, they'll immediately, kind of bow down to the power that is there. What the previous candidate just said really struck something with me too. Congressional people not taking the stand to do that, to say this is wrong. And I don't think they actually had much of a choice when it comes to this. So he mentioned the AUMF, but there's also the War Powers Resolution of 1973. And this requires the president to consult with Congress at any moment possible before there's a war. There has to be prior notification. Not only did he not notify Congress, unless he notified people from his own party saying, this is quietly going to happen. He announced in Mar-a-Lago, he announced via tweet, It's just so undiplomatic. But the prior notifications, the thing that's very worrisome in regard to that is there's the Gang of Eight. And this is a bipartisan group. This bipartisan group, if something is going to be able to pass Congress, there it needs to at least needs to be this Gang of Eight. And the Trump administration reportedly never even spoke to them. So there are different loopholes that the government has made, and the Department of Homeland Security instance has made to make things easier for what I would call this regime. Not only do they not obey the laws, but with Homeland Security, you have to go back and kind of look at where did this originally start. Our first speaker, Ernest, he did really well talking about how far back this goes. But when you look at, again, the weapons of mass destruction, they're using the same thing they did in Iraq, and we've learned so much why they shouldn't have done that. The most worrisome thing to me is the service members who are going to be affected by this. There's always blowback. You guys may have heard that when this is a big worry for the Department of Homeland Security when you have people such as Russians and Iranians who are in cahoots with Venezuela or have been very active in Venezuela. There's going to be blowback. We're already having issues with Russia. We're already having issues with Iran. This gives them more options to hurt American people and to involve service members more. So from a DHS standpoint, it's a little bit terrifying, I would say, because we're seeing the same patterns and we're not learning from history. We are again on the wrong side of history.
Right. Trump's talking about Cuba, Colombia. Stephen Miller's wife is talking about Greenland. But I wanted to bring in Evan here because, and we'll talk about a little bit about foreign policy in a second, but excuse me, we had some questions from YouTube and talking about the rot in our armed forces and how people can feel, are they obligated to evaluate legality in these situations? And I think from a lot of y'all's perspective, a lot of people deployed. And I understand that you probably got a lot of training on the rules of engagement and the law of armed conflict, probably from someone like me or Zach, who are lawyers. But I'm wondering, do you have a perspective on that, given, Evan, your background in deployment and as an officer, to answer maybe John's question, but also the perspective of like, is this an imminent threat? How can you carry out these kind of commands, especially someone who was at a higher level of a rank?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. First of all, I mean, our founding fathers kind of established this standard where we have a nonpartisan military that reports up to civilian leadership, right? Elected civilian leadership. And so at the end of the day, all of us that have been in uniform or who are in uniform are trained to follow orders and follow the orders of our civilian elected leadership. And there are some caveats to that in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, where you're supposed to disobey an unlawful order, and that can be very black and white if, for example, you are ordered to shoot a child. But in most cases, it's not black and white at all. Especially, I think, in this case in Venezuela, we're talking about all this reframing of this conflict, this reframing of narco-terrorism and the instability of the region as somehow being a justification for war. So now when you are in uniform and you are prosecuting missions like I did in Afghanistan, you have different rules of engagement that are set underneath that sort of higher level order that you're going to go prosecute your mission. And the rules of engagement define who can be targeted, what level of force can be used, and when you're authorized to use that force. And so when I was flying, I did close air support missions, which meant when our troops were being attacked on the ground, I could respond and we would actually drop munitions to protect them. In other cases, you had time-sensitive targeting, which is pre-planned. It goes through a approval process through JAGs and through senior leadership, and they actually allocate targets for you to strike. And you, as a military operator, have some leeway in how you prosecute those orders, but very rarely can you just turn them down. And so when we sent our troops into Venezuela to prosecute this mission, I think they did an outstanding job, and it's pretty incredible that we pulled off the kidnapping of a head of state with so little death and destruction but we really put them in a huge amount of risk because everybody has one rule of engagement, which is pretty standard. That's if you are attacked, you can attack back. And so every troop that we sent into Venezuela, or all the ships we had along the border, frankly, if any of them had been attacked, if Venezuela had put up more of a fight, then we could have really found ourselves in a protracted and very ugly conflict that really people will do what they need to do to defend themselves, and that is very much in the acceptable region of rules of engagement. So I feel thankful and I'm proud of our armed forces for doing such a good job. I think we put them in an incredible amount of risk, and for what? It's my question.
Yeah.
For what? For
Well, one of the
oil?
questions, Evan, is there must have been some people. We had a question from, let's see, the people within Venezuela. Were there people in Venezuela helping out? And it doesn't seem like they could have done this. The U.S. Armed Forces could have been doing this without Venezuelan support, or at least, as you're saying, to fight back. But I wanted to bring back Kevin on his perspective and the topic that Milah was bringing up, which is about foreign policy. And there's also a question about from Jody Johnson for Judge about taking over Greenland and Cuba and all these other things. And so put this in perspective, Kevin, on like foreign policy, because it seems like we're now in a land that is very much different as far as how we're approaching foreign policy and our involvement in other people's countries.
Yeah, great. So after 2001, 9/11, we entered the era of the global war on terror. Our national strategy was focused almost exclusively on taking out terror networks, and we executed that for the past 20 years in Afghanistan, Iraq, in Africa, and other places. So around 2017, 2018, there was a shift in our national security from GWOT, Global War on Terror, to what's called Great Power Competition. Great Power Competition was kind of bringing us back to the pre-Global War on Terror era of American hegemony and the agreements that we had at Bretton Woods after World War II, which means that Americans would kind of take the lead. It set up NATO, it set the groundwork for the European Union. It really was a new type of American-led alliances that would specifically help reduce global conflicts like World War I and World War II. So we transitioned back to this great power competition, which was supposed to help limit China and Russia's growing influences around the world. And it was a huge national strategy shift. It went from light mobile units in the military to looking at battleships again and looking at tanks and modernizing our IT and trying to use our intelligence apparatus to limit the effects of social media influence into the United States and other Western countries. So, however, what it's looking like now, and we're seeing this as Venezuela, what in my opinion looks to be the first step in this, is a return back to spheres of influence. We're retreating back from the global stage, and we're starting to look at the old Monroe Doctrine, which was before Bretton Woods. Monroe Doctrine is now apparently being called the Donroe Doctrine, and maybe we could call it the Dumroe Doctrine, because we're taking American hegemony back from competing against the influence of Russia and China and focusing solely on the Western Hemisphere. Well, what does that mean? It means that when we focus on one portion of the globe, China and Russia pick up that slack. So we're starting to see now that we went into a sovereign nation. Now Russia can justify going into Ukraine. All right. So China can now justify their continued buildup in the South China Sea and the potential takeover of Taiwan, because now those are in those power players' spheres of influence. So again, we don't know where it is. This could be a domino thing. Hopefully not. We could also continue to be aggressors in our hemisphere, to include Greenland or Mexico or Colombia. And so, but we're also not living in Monroe times. This is the modern era. Other countries have gained power and influence. Brazil is a growing economy, a growing powerhouse in the Western Hemisphere. Mexico is also a huge economy. And this is not Monroe times, and it's not in my opinion, the national strategy that we should be going down as well.
Thank you, Kevin. And I loved your joke. I didn't know Marines were so funny. So we all like to make fun of each other here, Air Force versus Marines. So, I mean, we're getting a lot of questions and we thank you for them. If you if you have a question or a comment, please subscribe to the channel and then you're able to provide a question and we're going to start answering a lot of them. But I wanted to loop in William and also Zach on some questions because what has been the GOP response, right? Like I heard a lot going on the Sunday morning talk shows. We see the jubilation from Venezuelans. They're also saying, hey, like we've had a regime change under Biden with Syria. So like, how do we respond to that, William?
Yeah, that was Kevin's response there just before me was such a brilliant summary. Folks, if you missed any of that, go back and listen to what he said because this is a global long-term threat, right? And we're used to the typical Republican short-term shot of dopamine distraction, like bulldozing the East Wing or renaming the Gulf of Mexico. We're used to that by now. But this is much, much, much worse. It's because this has upended decades, 80 years of precedent that has kept the United States and the world order safe. And that's what Kevin was getting to. I just want to add just a little bit of context to that. This world order that has brought us peace for 80 years was crafted by General Dwight D. Eisenhower after World War II with the Allies, through the United Nations, through the Geneva Convention, even through the War Powers Act. And it's saying that one nation cannot just invade another nation because their guy's a bad guy. And that precedent has kept us all safe for 80 years. But what this is now doing, just like Kevin said, China's watching. And now China says, oh, well, guess what? I'm now looking at Taiwan and their semiconductor industry. I'm now looking at the chain of Filipino islands that create a barrier around China. North Korea is watching. Russia was watching, and up until Trump was held in check. And after Trump, we see they invaded Ukraine after Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons. So all of this world order created by President Eisenhower after World War II has kept us safe and secure for 80 years. So folks, this is not just another Republican distraction. They want it to seem like that, but this is much, much, much worse and much dangerous to the peace and safety and security of the United States.
Yeah, I think, the question is also, does Trump also stand to benefit politically, or is this harmful to him in this moment, especially as we gear up for this election? And so I want to bring in Zach and then maybe Evan before we dive into some of these questions, which is like, how do we talk to voters about this and give them some hope, like that this, how we can respond and also hopefully win come this fall. We're all knocking doors. We're all talking to people. I'm assuming we've been all on message about affordability and what this means for us at home at our kitchen tables. It's not some faraway place. It is real, like you're saying, William. But Zach, how would you say we should respond?
Well, we should respond by not sitting down and hoping that this all goes away. I know there's a lot of voters out there. I've talked to them today that are scared. They feel helpless. They don't know what to do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I felt the same way. And I felt helpless and I felt like I was screaming into the void. And so I threw my hat into the ring for this election. This is why all elections matter. This is why local elections matter all the way up to the national ones. Because if we sit at home and we just hope it all is going to go away and we don't go out and vote, then that system of checks and balances that, William is right. It seems to be eroding. It seems to be no response. There's no pushback up there in DC. So if we're not out there protesting at the No Kings protest, voting at the ballot box, and just sitting at home, that's the only thing you shouldn't do, I guess. Anything but sit at home. Anything but keep your mouth shut.
Right. I mean, go out and knock some doors for these people on this call, because we have to talk to people, become a precinct chair. Because if you listen to our podcasts, like we don't have a lot of precinct chairs. Less than half of our state is represented by a precinct chair who's just a person talking into their community about what's going on. And some conversations and communications are better than none. And also support all these people in their endeavors. Donate your time. But Evan, like, is this good or bad for us? Like, how do you perceive this? Because it seems like we're all on message, affordability. Like, now we seem to be treading in a different box, right? Like, I'm a West Wing fan, and the last season, Josh was talking about Santos's campaign. We're in the economic box, and then we're in the security box, and then we're in the question mark box. Like, where are we?
No, that's a great question. And look, I think we need to be flexible and adapt to overcome. I mean, at the end of the day, we are going to be safe when we are defending the Constitution and not pages from Putin's playbook. Most Americans understand, I think, at a deep level, the things that Will and Kevin were talking about, that there's a world order that has worked in our favor since, paid for by the greatest generation after World War II. And it's bought America incredible peace and prosperity. And that world order has come about through diplomacy and regional cooperation and targeted sanctions, not by acting like a bully in the Western Hemisphere and potentially trading Venezuela for Ukraine with the likes of Putin. And so I think at the end of the day, we need to do what Abe Lincoln said to do, which is choose carefully where you're going to plant your feet and then don't budge. So we can respond with moral clarity. We can respond with real dialogue like we're having on this call in the interests of 99% of Americans, not the 1%. I think Americans are tired of being ruled by the extremes. And certainly when you see all the chest thumping from the Trumpies online, it starts to feel like, oh, that's a lot of America. But recent polls show over 70% of Americans oppose any type of foreign war with Venezuela. And the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene have abandoned ship with Trump. And so we need to build a big tent that is welcoming and forgiving for people the America First movement, the true conservatives that are being let down by this administration. We need to welcome them with reasonable and open dialogue and debate, and give them a home. And then we will win.
Right.
If it's okay, I'd like to add a little something to that. Evan, I agree with everything that you just said. The thing that I would like to add for not just this group, but for the people watching, another way to contribute to this is, number one, educate yourself, and number two, share factual information with others. I personally am a firm believer that when you know better, you do better. But if you are uninformed or misinformed, like it doesn't contribute well to the conversation, because these sorts of conversations, whether people are having them at the kitchen table or they're having them in these sorts of forums, they should be grounded in something, ideally facts. We talk from our perspectives because we have experience in the military. That's why we are all here. That's why you are all watching. You are hearing from people who have experience or in this arena. And then to another point that Evan just said, finding somewhere to plant your feet and don't move. Me personally, I find it a little weird that our president pardons one former president that was felony convicted of trafficking 400 metric tons of cocaine, while also pursuing another president for narco terrorism. I don't, even from his own message or even from the Republican Party's own message of America first, I personally don't find that that puts America first, whether you are pro pardoning President Juan Orlando Hernandez or pro capturing the president of Venezuela and his wife. Find a place to plant your feet and stand there. Educate yourself. Share factual information with others and have a positive conversation about where you would want your country to go. Because I think that everyone here on this panel can agree from personal experience in the military that freedom isn't free. Freedom is not guaranteed. This thing that we have called democracy is not just something that is inherently bestowed and forever protected just because we're Americans. We served to defend the freedom that we get to enjoy, the democracy that we get to participate in. If there's one thing that anyone here should not do, is sit at home and do nothing. We have a democracy for a reason. You don't have to run for office. Some of us choose to because we believe firmly in our democracy and we want to participate in that way. But if your participation is going to the ballot box, or it is educating yourself, or it is knocking on doors, or it's donating, or whatever it is that you have the capacity to do to participate in this democracy, I would encourage everybody watching, everybody on this panel to please, please, please participate in our democracy. It is not guaranteed. It is not something that we are guaranteed to always have. It is fragile, and there are people that are in the uniforms that we have all worn that are risking their lives day in and day out, both on deployments and in training, to make sure that we can uphold this democracy.
Amen. Okay, so on our podcast, we're learning why we haven't flipped the state in so long. And one of the reasons is that people are apathetic and not voting. So we are not a Republican state. We're a low voter turnout state. And of the people who are turning out, it is Republican. So we got to turn out some voters, y'all. And so, Ernest, I know you had a comment on what you think is the most effective action for us in our population. I think you commented in our chat function, but can you please share?
Yes, yes. So I got to host some of these protests earlier, the Hands Off and the No Kings, and then just other protests sponsored by Democratic groups. And they make a big difference. They catch attention. President Trump has earned a nickname. Anybody remember? It's a food group, Taco. Yeah. So Trump always chickens out. And if if he knows that the people are against him and are against his action, and it's kind of like, the kid that knows the parents are watching, we need to have that signal go out to those people and say, look, so if you hear of a protest, whether it's a hands off or a no kings, get out there and participate. We have learned that the Republicans are not the strongest, the ones in Congress are not the strongest at stopping President Trump from doing something. I don't know if they're afraid of threats to themselves or their families or their careers or what, but they are not the strongest. The people are the strongest. Non-violent protest, dressing up in those dinosaur costumes and those frog suits, or just having your signs and standing on the corner, it makes a big difference. So I would very much encourage people to protest and participate. And if you don't get to, but you drive by and you see one, honk and wave and cheer and encourage those people. They need your support. But it's all going to come down to the elections in 26. Bottom line, it's going to come to that. The protests are going to be stopgap.
Yeah. I know Milah wanted to say something, but I also want to get to a lot of these questions. And some of them you may be able to answer, Milah. One was about is this a risk to our troops, especially as other countries might be shutting down bases in response to us? We had one from Cameron. And then also there's questions about if there's no congressional pushback, then how do we really check Trump and his expansionist action? So Milah, I know you wanted to chime in.
Yes, and actually is what I wanted to talk about, what Congress is currently doing in regard to this. So We do have people who are trying to fight against it. There is such apathy, I feel like, in Congress right now. We do have Democrats who are fighting back, but there is a lot of apathy, and that's where the midterms come in. We need people who have experience with this to go in and do something. So there are two things, major things that Congress is doing right now. We have the War Powers Resolution. This is an emergency vote that should take place next week. And this measure will mandate immediate withdrawal of U.S. forces from Venezuela because they went against Article 1. They had over 150 planes and over 1,000 troops there. That is war. It is not any type of military anything. It is war according to the Constitution. So they are looking at that War Powers Resolution Act. The second is defunding efforts. We have HR 104, and that's the Unauthorized Military Action in Venezuela Act, and that aims to cut off funds for any unauthorized hostilities. One thing we're seeing is wording matters. We were told it was a different thing than war. Police, I can't even think of the word that they used for it because it was just so out there. But instead of it being a war, it was a police, I don't even know what they call it.
Law enforcement, yeah.
Yeah, law enforcement. So it definitely isn't that. So those little words that they use, what we're finding is those little words oftentimes, I'm seeing them sometimes push back with those little words. Any hostilities, that encompasses everything. So they are trying to push back. I feel like there could be harder pushback, but they are doing some things. It takes people not being afraid for their families or for themselves, for their own lives. That's the point we're at in this country, and we need strong people to do that. So we do have a little bit of pushback. I expect more, and I plan on calling my representatives and reaching out to people who are currently in office and saying, what more are you doing besides trying to defund and enacting a resolution that the Trump regime is probably going to ignore?
Yeah, I wanted to get back, maybe Nathan, if you had a perspective on congressional authorization. We have a lot of questions on like notification that's required to Congress and like what were they supposed to do prior to that. And as I understand it, to Milah's point, like they're characterizing this as a law enforcement function that was supported by the military, going back to what I was saying with extradition on the indictments. But like, it seems to me also this is not only about that. And so what was Congress's role? What was it supposed to be? What is the notification process? Do you know? I mean, I'm just asking because I believe you might.
I know like the War Powers Act, there is a certain period that they have that, but they're supposed to be given notifications. I mean, the administration has shown no respect to Congress at all. I mean, nothing that they could have, the way this would have normally worked is they would have gotten a blanket authorization for the use of military force like months out. So as that military buildup was occurring, they would have gotten an authorization for the use of military force to do regime change or whatever it was that they wanted to do there. They didn't bother to do that. And, unfortunately, like with the Republican Congress that we have, like they're not going to check this president, at least not until his poll numbers totally dive. I think, and I think we need to start being realistic about some of this. And, you said, Kate, earlier on the call, and I've heard a couple people say that, we as military members, of course, most of us are not in anymore. We have to follow orders. We have to follow lawful orders, right? That's what we have to do. And we're getting to a point very, very quickly, and you can make the argument that we've already passed that point that unlawful orders are already being given, right? And that is a check that remains. That if there is not authorization for wars that are being done without Congress's approval and in violation of our Constitution, those are inherently illegal operations, and those are inherently illegal orders. And you are going to get to a point then where I would argue that you as a military member are then going to have you're going to have an obligation to not obey those unlawful orders. So that's a very tricky road, and that's a lot to ask military members. Like I don't wish that on them at all, but I just think we need to start being cognizant of things in those terms, because we're just moving into very uncharted territory here.
Ernest, I think you had a perspective, but Also want to get other people. I know Zach is a former JAG and William is saying that he has a comment, if you don't mind. Trying to answer all these questions. So William, I'm going to kick this off to you and then I'd like to hear from Zach.
Hey, thanks. I do get the sense from the public that there is frustration that Democrats in Congress aren't doing more to push back. My message is to everyone, no one's going to come and save you. No Democrat in Congress can save you because they don't have the votes, nor will they save you because they are politicians. You have to save yourself. So if Ted Cruz got 8 million phone calls yesterday morning, you better believe he would be voting against this. And if Cornyn had 5,000 people outside his office, you better believe he would be voting against this. Folks, Congress is not going to save us. We have got to take action. That is my message to you.
Well, I just want to talk about just talking about refusing lawful orders, and the training that we as JAGs got on this. It's not like for every single grunt that's on the ground for them to stop and ask if there's congressional approval first before they walk into a war zone. It's not something that we can look at with hindsight. When we're talking about refusing lawful orders, I need everybody to hear it. You cannot you cannot even point fingers at 90% of the military members that are out there right now. Now, there are leaders that are in higher offices than I've ever been in, and those are the ones that need to be looking at whether or not it's lawful to go into another country and kidnap the leader of that country. That's who needs to be looking at it. Those are the people that are right now in the rooms. My fellow veterans here know that those people are concerned with lots of different things, including their own careers, but they have sworn that oath to uphold the Constitution. And as we've all sworn the same oath here, that's the same thing that I'm going to go into office with, and that is protect the Constitution regardless of whether or not it's good for my career. And we need more leaders like that, and that's why going to the ballot box, like I've already talked about, is paramount this next election in November.
Ernest?
Thank you. Yes, we all remember the Heritage Foundation created Project 2025. This document was supported by billionaires and pretty much adopted as the platform by the Republican Party, even though there was a lot of denial there. And it all points towards what Bernie Sanders likes to call oligarchy or just authoritarian rule. And this is what we're seeing. When you take huge military action and repeated military action without any kind of congressional approval, without the will of the people, without, solely on the whims of the man in charge and the executive branch, that's what we're dealing with. If people ever wondered, what does that really mean, authoritarianism or oligarchy? It means they're attacking Venezuela, and the next thing you know, they might be attacking Greenland or somewhere else. And what can we do about it? Not much.
Ernest, we have a question about cost, and I think you had maybe an answer to that, which is, it seems like, and I'm looking on just my own little research, is that the operation in Venezuela over the last couple of months has cost us hundreds of millions of dollars, just operationally, from fleets and personnel and everybody that's down there. So do you have an answer? And then I'd also want to hear from Evan.
Yes. Well, it all depends on what you include. If you just count rounds expended, fuel consumed, maybe the pay period of the people during their training or whatever, hundreds of thousands is probably right. But I think you can easily go up to billions of dollars. We had the largest, newest aircraft carrier in the Caribbean for how long? A month or more? Many other ships, a lot of very expensive aircraft were used in these raids. Just some very, very highly trained military personnel. I think it easily could be billions.
Evan, and then Keenen, I know as a logistics person, you probably have a perspective on that too.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So in the military, we have a saying, hope is not a course of action. So I agree with William that we can't sort of hope that soldiers will start to define whether or not their orders are lawful, and we can't hope that something will happen to Trump. We have to sort of focus on what we can control and fight in our foxholes. And so the real key to checking the power of this president is, beating feet, knocking doors, and taking back the House in 2026. I think the expectation that we can effectively check the president, that our Congress people can check the president until we have a majority is not a good expectation. So we have to get to work. And part of that is reminding people that, look, money makes the world go round. So what does Trump talk about when he's talking about Venezuela? He says oil, and he makes it sound like it's a great thing for everyday Americans. But everyday Americans, he's got to do a good job explaining how us taking oil from Venezuela translates to making life more affordable for everyday Americans, because it's actually just going to put a lot of money in the hands of already powerful people like Chevron and Halliburton and the people involved in the oil industry. We need to tie things back to business. What is really good for business, and especially small business, is stability. Okay, so businesses plan 5 years out, who they can hire, where to invest, what facilities, who their trading partners are, and what this administration is doing is destroying that planning capability. With tariffs and trade wars, and now actual real military action that is disrupting the world order, like we talked about, businesses can't plan, and American businesses will suffer. And it is driving all of our global trading partners into the arms of China, who's very different. China doesn't elect new leaders every 4 years. China works off a 100-year plan. So China's going around telling everybody, hey, we're your stable trading partner. And we've got 3 to 4 times the population that America does, and they're very serious. So at the end of the day, we need to speak to people's interests, speak to people's needs. And to your earlier question, Kate, these wartime actions, these sort of aggressive capture of Venezuelan heads of state and bombing boats, they do affect business. And at the end of the day, we should be focusing on real business interests that make life more affordable for everyday Americans, not just the top 1%.
Preach, preach. So I want to hear from Keenen on that, and then also Kevin. We had a comment earlier from Teresa that said that she had read that Devin Nunes, who's linked to Trump, made an unsuccessful bid of $10 billion for petroleum. So anyways, Keenen, your perspective, especially from cost perspective, and what might this mean, especially in potentially destabilizing this area? And then Kevin, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think I look at the terms of cost as what does it mean to the average American, right? Because we can talk about the overall dollar figure and how much it costs the country, but there's for the average everyday person who's probably just focused solely on paying their rent or their mortgage or their bills, or trying to find some form of stability in our current market despite inflation and unemployment and all of these things. What does this mean for them when they're being served by an administration that makes so many promises, like putting America first, or that we're going into a golden age, and all of these things that sound great, but we're not seeing it, right? You want to talk about cost, like I want to talk about what is the net benefit for the United States to be moving in this direction for the civilian, for the average American, because that is what our democracy is designed to support. It's for the people and it's by the people. How does this help us? And for the people that are watching, as well as the folks that are in the panel, I just want to remind everyone, you can all pick up the phone and call your representatives and ask them what they're doing about this, or why they're not doing what you think they're supposed to be doing, right? They all have phone numbers, they have emails. It's not hard to figure out or to look up the contact information for your congressman or for your House rep. You can call these people, you can leave them a message, you can send them an email and say, hey, what are you doing about this, right? Again, I encourage participation in the democracy from the lowest to the highest level. I encourage everyone to engage, even if it's not current, like if you're not at the ballot box right now and you're concerned about this, communicating with your representatives to start that dialogue, educating yourself, like I was saying before, because this is going to have a cost to the everyday American. And if you don't know what that is, or you don't know where to start to find that information, start asking those questions of your representatives, because you might find that what they're supporting or what they're not doing doesn't align with what you think your representative should be doing. I think and to go back to your original question, Kate, I think this cost is easily well within the millions. And the important question is why? Why did we make this investment that doesn't seem to prioritize American? I understand that we're going back to a they have oil sort of playbook, but that's not going to make groceries more affordable. That's not going to make houses more affordable. There's a lot of people in our country that is more concerned with the near term issues than about the 5-year plan of Exxon or Chevron or BP. And good for them. Billionaires can make even more money for themselves and not share it with the rest of us. But for the folks that's just trying to afford putting like school supplies or afford healthcare, if you don't know what this looks like for you, please, please, please reach out to your representatives and force them to have that conversation. Let them know who you are, not just that it is a city or a district or a reason. That like let them know your name. Start that conversation.
Well, I mean, to that point, my representative is Beth Van Dyne. I don't know if I called her office if she'd be picking up, Kevin. So I want to shoot this over to you, and then I think we're going to try to wrap up. But I think we've answered a lot of the questions, so thank you for those in our chat function. You can all look us up on the internet. I'm sure all of us would welcome people messaging us. Jenny knows how to reach us, but Kevin, can you give us your perspective on that, especially what Evan was saying? I know you were interested in responding to what he had to say, and then we'll wrap up, and I'll take it over from there.
Great, thank you, Kate. And the answer is no, Beth wouldn't answer her phone. But I will say, as far as, one of the questions was, did somebody try to make a deal with Chevron and businesses? And, this guy was trying to get this resource. And I would encourage everybody. It's a very short book to go read it. It's called War is a Racket. It is by Marine Corps General and two-time Medal of Honor winner Smedley Butler. This book is a really good representation of what happened specifically during the Monroe Doctrine era days when we were very concentrated on Latin America. At the time, it was mostly bananas, and a lot of the banana wars, and Chiquita Banana was the corporation of the era who were enforcing price fixing schemes and business opportunities in foreign countries. That's a big part of the Monroe Doctrine. It's not just keeping, foreign actors such as in Monroe days, Europeans out of the Western Hemisphere, but it was also propping up big business, where that, goes into war is a racket, which after reflecting on his actions in Central America, Smedley Butler was like, I was just a henchman for big business. So, I think it's worth really getting into, if we're going to call this the Dunroe Doctrine, that this is part of it. This was the age of robber barons and monopolies and big business. And if that's where we're going, be prepared for it, because what happened after the Monroe Doctrine and monopolies and robber barons was the Great Depression. So, I just want to make sure that we're all aware that elections do have consequences. If this is our national strategy and history repeats or at very least rhymes, to be prepared for what comes next.
Okay, lightning round. We're going to end with a minute or less for each person. We're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. Nathan, I'm going to start with you. Under a minute, what is your last word? On our podcast, we always end with the last word. Again, we're at Mission Texas Podcast. People can find us on social media as well as all the places that you get your podcast. But we end with the last word. And usually on our podcast, it's about flipping Texas. How are we going to do it? But I'm wondering, what is everyone's last word here on this topic? And also, how are we going to win? Nathan.
Well, on this topic, I just want to say I'm very happy that we have the congressional candidates on this call, that we have the 5 that we have, because at the end of the day, y'all 5 are going to be the ones that are going to have something to do with war powers in this national conversation. And I think we need to start making the point as Democrats more that we are also a party that has a lot of veterans in it and a lot of people that have patriotism and have served, and all the people on this call can attest to that, right? And for too long, the Republican Party has had this ridiculous mantle of being the uber patriotic party or whatever, and that's just not true. So I'm excited that we have all these people on the call that are going to be carrying that flag for the Democrats. And just as pertains to this conversation, I hope we really push that message in the election.
Yeah, we're all patriots. I mean, we all love our country. We love our state, and we've all sworn an oath on this call. William Marks.
Trump and Roger Williams really only have 2 strategies. 1, billionaires getting richer, and 2, blame minorities and immigrants. And attacking Venezuela checked both those boxes. Folks, don't fall for the distraction. This isn't going to make grocery prices go down. It's not going to make your health care better. It's not going to make your job better. It's not going to help you put food on the table. This is cruelty for cruelty's sake. This is helping billionaires get richer. Please don't fall for it.
Thank you. All right, Ernest.
Well, I'm horrified by the action that we're having to talk about, the whole topic, but I am so honored to be part of this group of these men and women who served and are working so hard as candidates, as Democrats in Texas, trying to serve again. I know for my campaign, our mantra is putting people's needs first. And that is so much important about what we're trying to do here. We're trying to not start a bunch of wars. We're trying to maintain our international relationships, and we're trying to do things that help the people. What we're getting out of our current administration is chaos, corruption, cruelty, and a lot of consequences that we are left to pay. So to the people watching, and please spread to your friends and neighbors, please elect these watchdogs. Please bring more Democrats to Congress to where we can have oversight on this administration and we can do what needs to be done. So I've got my seatbelt buckled up, and I hope everyone else does too, because we need to flip a lot of seats in North Texas. I'm Ernest Lineberger for Texas Congressional District 26.
All right, Evan Hunt, and then Zach Herbert. You're still on mute, Evan. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Kate. I just want to say how proud I am to stand with everybody on this call and be fighting for what's right in this country. I think we need to make it clear, no Democrat, especially nobody on this line, is scared of a fight. That's not what this is about. We don't want to be bullies. We want to stand up to real threats and plan for the long-term interests of our country. And that is not what this is. This is about short-term gains and about favoring the few over the many. And we need to get back to being a party that is peaceful and patriotic, welcoming and forgiving, and loud and proud. And we can do that. Don't waste your time calling your reps. We're beyond it. Get behind a candidate that speaks to your heart and go support that candidate, and let's take our country back. Thank you all.
Thank you. Zach, and then Milah.
I like that. I love to see so many veterans that are running for office right now. It's really great, especially Democrat veterans. Great to be a part of this group. And I'll tell everybody this. We're gonna we are going to win in November, and we are going to push that wave through to the next presidential election, and we're going to clean up this mess. That's what I plan on doing. That's my hope for everybody. That right now, what we're learning is all of the things that we need to put into place to enforce these checks and balances that apparently you can just ignore. And we're gonna put those back into place and learn, and for the next generation and that after that, because I think it's already been said a bunch of times, we are patriots. We do love our country, and we want to make it the best place to live for everyone, not just the billionaires.
Yep. Milah, and then Kevin.
All right. So I thank everybody here on the call again. Thank you so much for having this and to be part of it. I am very thankful to be part of all of this with you. But my last thing I wanted to say to both the candidates and then also to the people is everybody who is speaking in this forum today came to be useful, not comfortable. We didn't come here to be comfortable. We came here because we felt like we could fight and make a change. We see what's going on in Congress. We see what's going on with the Trump regime. And there are people that are fighting for you who do not want to be comfortable. As a matter of fact, being comfortable, I think maybe something's wrong at this point, but to get out there and to be as useful as we can for the people around us. I know several of us have children. We want this world to be better for them. We're parents, we're neighbors, we're friends, and we're fighting for you. Just like what Kevin said, we can call our representatives. We definitely can do that. But the best thing we can do is to get behind candidates like all of us who are here, who are willing to be useful and not be comfortable. Thank you so much for having me today. It was wonderful to join y'all here.
I got my alphabet wrong. So the next person, thank you, Milah, is Keenen and then Kevin. So sorry about that. What kind of person am I?
So, number one, I'd like to say, and just to keep it 60 seconds like you requested, I'd like to say that I really appreciate being in the presence of such great people that are running to try and make a difference. I would like to remind everyone on the panel and everyone that is watching that our government is designed to work for you. Please participate in our democracy. Please, whether it is voting, whether it is donating, whether it is knocking on doors, whether it's volunteering, however it is that you can or you feel inclined or comfortable participating in our democracy, please, please, please participate. It does not, it is a very fragile system that we have. We must protect it. There are people that protect this democracy with their lives and are honored to do so. It would be a shame, especially if you are not feeling comfortable with the way that our country has been going, with the way that our affordability has been going, with the way that our housing market has been going. It would be a shame if one day the next generation asked, "What did you do?" and you said nothing. Please, please, please participate.
100%. All right, last person, last but not least, and then Jenny's going to wrap up. Kevin.
Right. Well, thank you so much. First and foremost, thank you all on this call for your service to our country. And for anyone watching who has served as well, thank you so much for your service. For those of you who were worried during listening to what was going on in Venezuela, it's completely understandable. Know that the folks on this call are here to stop the craziness, as it seems like every day is a race to the bottom with the Trump administration. But we all have skin in the game here. And my wife is in the Army National Guard. Kate is still serving. Her husband's still serving. These are things that are impacting our families, and they're not impacting the people who are in Congress currently. They're so far detached, whether it's from service on the military side or even their families being impacted by the decisions that they make when it comes to how we use and authorize the use of our forces, and the power that we have and the goodwill that we've built up over the past 50, 80 years. It's something that you need to also take into account when going to elect new representatives, when you're going to the ballot box. Think about what it is you want to see in your representatives, because that is what will be affecting what happens to our country, what happens with our military, and what happens with our families. So thank you all very much. CD24, looking forward to seeing you all at the ballot box and block walks and events and everything else. So thank you so much. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We are going to have this recording on YouTube as well as on our podcast feed if you want to hear it again, or if we have new listeners. And I always say, God bless Texas, but also God bless our troops, God bless our country. And I'll allow Jenny to have the last word. Jenny's muted, so she's going to unmute herself. We always love Zoom, we learned a lot. We learned a lot, didn't we?
I said, wow, this is a great conversation, great discussion with everybody. And I think we could have gone on for another hour. Thanks for everybody for hanging in there. One thing that I have gotten from this is not only are these guys like great candidates, I'm so proud that they're running and that we have the opportunity to elect them, but also it emphasizes again why people who have actually been in uniform, who have served our country and in the military, are so valuable as politicians, as people who are governing. And so I really would encourage you all that are listening to work for these guys. Find out which ones of them are running in your area, and support them. Support them however you can. There's lots of different ways that you can support them, but get in touch with them and find out what they need and what you can do. Thank you to Kate and Mission Texas for helping us out tonight. As you can tell, I am definitely not a moderator, so thank you very much for taking that on. And thank you so much to the candidates for stepping out of the busy lives that you have in your campaigning to come and have this conversation with us. I think that it was really important. I feel so much more informed and sure of what the next steps should be for us. For our part, Richardson Area Democrats, known as RAD, are a vibrant community just north of Dallas. We meet on the third Thursday of every month for really informative happy hour meetings, as well as several other meetings and special events during the month. The big event we have coming up, I have to promote it. We are going to be co-hosting this month a Texas Attorney General Democratic primary debate at Richland College in North Dallas on the 22nd of this month. If you signed up through Mobilize tonight, you'll get the opportunity to register for that debate as well as other events that we have coming up. So we'd love to see you there. We'd like to meet you soon at some other event. So thank you again for joining us tonight. Thank you to the candidates again. And I feel more strongly than ever that we need to get these guys elected. So one more thing. Thank you to my team for helping put this thing together tonight. It was pretty amazing what we were able to do so quickly. So thank you to my RAD team too. This video will live on our YouTube channel. Share it out, and let's keep working to save democracy. Take care.
All right, that's a wrap.